All right, today we're diving into something really important, the essential code that guides psychological research with people here in the UK. We're talking about the British Psychological Society's Code of Human Research Ethics. So let's break down what it is and, why it's so crucial.
I mean, it's a pretty big question, right? When scientists are studying people, what are the rules? What actually stops a researcher from crossing a line? And maybe more importantly, what's there to protect the people who volunteer their time, their thoughts, their experiences, all for the sake of science? And you know what? The code itself gives us the answer right from the get-go. It's not just some dry list of do's and don'ts. The whole foundation of good ethical research is built on this idea of mutual respect and trust. Without that, well, the science just can't happen. It's that simple.
Okay, so before we jump into all the specifics, let's take a second to really get our heads around why this idea of trust is so incredibly central. Because it's the why behind the rules that really gives them their power, you know? So you might be asking, why use these broad principles instead of just a super strict black and white set of rules? Well, think about it. Human research is just so incredibly diverse. There's no way you could write a specific regulation for every single possible situation. So this approach, it creates a flexible, moral framework that really empowers researchers to think ethically, not just, tick off a bunch of boxes on a form. So what are these core principles? The whole code is basically built around four big ideas. You can think of them as an ethical compass for any psychologist doing research. There they are. These four are the absolute pillars of the entire code. So let's break down what each one really, truly means. Okay, first up, respect. And this is huge. It's all about seeing participants not as subjects in an experiment, but as active partners in the research. It means their privacy, their culture, their background, and their right to say no at literally any time. All of that has to be protected. Bottom line, they are always in control. Next up, we have scientific integrity. And what I find so interesting about this one is that it actually frames good science as an ethical issue. And you might ask why? Well, because a poorly designed study is a massive waste of everyone's time and resources. And more than that, it completely devalues what the participants have contributed. So it's a researcher's ethical duty to do top quality work. Then we have social responsibility. This is the principle that reminds researchers that their work doesn't just happen in some isolated lab, in a vacuum. Psychology at its heart should serve society. The knowledge it creates needs to have a point. It should aim for beneficial outcomes that actually contribute to the common good. And that brings us to the fourth and final principle, maximizing benefit and minimizing harm. This one is like a constant balancing act. Research should always be trying to do more good than harm. And a really good rule of thumb here is that any risk of harm should generally be no greater than what a person might run into just living their ordinary day-to-day life. Okay, so those are the four big principles, but what do they actually look like in the real world? How do they work in practice? Let's get concrete and see how they apply to two absolutely critical areas: how researchers assess risk and how they get valid consent. First, let's talk about risk. When we hear the word risk, we might think of physical danger, but in psychology, that's rarely the case. We're usually talking about the potential for psychological harm, things like stress, anxiety, maybe damage to someone's self-esteem, or even threats to their privacy. So what does that actually look like? Well, the code is really clear about flagging certain types of research that need extra scrutiny. For instance, if a study involves vulnerable groups like kids, or if it's asking about really sensitive topics like illegal behavior, or if it uses a significant amount of deception, all of that is considered more than minimal risk. And when that's the case, the ethical planning has to be absolutely rock solid. All right, the second key area is getting what's called valid consent. And the code breaks this down into three really clear steps. And listen, this is so much more than just getting a signature on a form. You have to actively inform the participants, then you have to make sure they genuinely understand what they're signing up for, and then you document that agreement. And this really gets to the heart of it. Valid consent is a process. It's not a one-time event. It has to be informed. It has to be completely voluntary, no pressure at all. And it has to be understood as ongoing. You can change your mind. Anything less than that, if it feels misleading or you feel coerced, that's just not ethical. Full stop. Okay, so as we start to wrap this up, let's circle back to a really central idea.
a theme that frames this entire code.
And honestly, this quote from the code itself really says it all. The code gives you the principles, the framework, but it can't possibly give you the specific answer for every single ethical dilemma. In the end, it all comes down to the researcher's own professional and ethical judgment. It's a tool for thinking, not a substitute for it.
Which leaves us with this final thought, this question. Is a code of ethics just a rule book you have to follow, or is it more like a compass to guide you? The BPS code makes it pretty clear that ethical research isn't about blindly checking boxes. It's about using these core principles to navigate the incredibly complex and important world of studying human beings. It's that compass, helping you find the right path.